There has been a lot of discussion around the city of Twin Falls in recent months about an upcoming, well, call it a ballot measure that would authorize a new firehouse in the city. I think I've got that. It's simplified. Trust me, I think I've got that very simplified. In fact, early voting has started, and so some people may already be voting on this, but I was cautioning people the other day on the air that you might want to hear some of the discussion this morning before you actually go and make a decision. And we have a couple of people joining us in studio who've done some extensive research into all of this. Joining us this morning are Leroy Harcourt and Debbie Dane. And I want to thank you both for coming. But I got those right.
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning.
They rehearsed me before we went on the air. Bill Colley with you too on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com, and we're at 45 at 8:06. To begin with, you were part, I guess, of a citizens committee that looked into all of this to do some study on this and to try to come up with some details for the public, right? Is that a good way to put that?
Yes, we were part of what they called the Citizens Advisory Committee. We were appointed by the city of Twin Falls, but we were the second committee. The first committee was the program committee, which extensively surveyed all of the fire stations, went through and said what is needed, and then they put those figures to a professional cost estimating. Leroy, help me out here.
Yeah, it was a company out of Salt Lake, so we could make sure we had
Good numbers.
good numbers, not just a proposal of.
So you came back with something solid.
Yes. So our charge was to look at that report, do our own due diligence, which we did. We toured all of the fire stations and actually went to Boise and saw a state of the art station up in Boise, and the difference was remarkable. And so then we came back and crunched numbers like you do in a household and said, okay, this is what our recommendation is to the city.
And the city isn't talking about just going out and like having one great big tax increase. This is going to be bonded, as I assume, right?
Yes, this is, we went through bonding 101.
Yeah.
And part of the reason there's a 20-year term, and we had our choice of a 25-year term or a 20-year term. 25, of course, the amount would have been lower. However, it saves taxpayers and the city $6 million by going with the 20-year term.
It's a little bit like a 20 to 30-year mortgage, right? The 20-year mortgage in the long run is going to save you more money than the 30-year.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. How much total would be borrowed then in the project?
There's the amount is $36 million, and it is to rebuild Station 1, which is downtown, Station 2, which is on Falls Avenue, and Station 3, which is on Orchard and Washington. It would provide some money for the beginnings of a training center, because we have no training opportunities for our firefighters here locally. They have to go to Meridian. And then there's money in the bond to repurpose Station 1 when it moves out for the police, for the public safety campus there on 2nd.
Are we talking about combining these three into one big facility or three separate facilities?
There are three separate facilities. The one, Station 3, which is out here, Orchard and Washington, will be built on the same property. Station 2, which is on Falls, which is our oldest station, was opened in 1962. It will be rebuilt over in kind of behind CSI on the Cheney, Washington, there on a piece of property. Station 2, we don't know, or Station 1, we don't know. That property hasn't been acquired yet.
Well, you want some sort of a rough location, probably similar to where it is today, for downtown use.
Exactly, to address that downtown area and also kind of moving to the east.
Have you heard much reaction from the public? You probably also sat down and did some listening too, I'm sure.
We've done a lot of listening.
We have, and we're cautiously optimistic because we've had really good response from the public. They realize that this is a need, that when they call 911, they want our firefighters there. And to this point, their working conditions are, as one firefighter put it, they're making do, but they're not making us make do. And so we're hearing, well, we're 40 years probably past due. These needed to be rebuilt or enlarged to increase capacity uh, years ago, but we don't know why the decision was, that hindsight's 2020. We're moving forward.
Just the growth of the city. I mean, there's a number of factors, obviously, that we've got the growth of the city, obviously, uh, that has an impact on this. Number two, I think Suzanne Hawkins had mentioned you now have women who are in the fire departments, and if they have to spend the night, they're going to need separate facilities because they don't necessarily go home at the end of an 8-hour shift. That's not how that works, right? Number three, you've got chemical hazards that we weren't aware of 40 years ago, and you don't want people exposed to those, especially when they come back from. We got so much more heavy industry than we had here just 40 years ago. You have a fire in one of these facilities, and you're dealing with a lot of materials you don't even know what they are. So those are some of the factors, right, that play into all of this, the need for this.
Yeah, and I think one of the big questions is that we get in the community is why now? Well, it's time, and we don't know why it hasn't been brought up or proposed in the past. But one of the realtors here in the valley, we've had about 15 um, meetings with civic groups and to educate them. He said the best time to build is now. Prices aren't going lower, and our
Mhm.
city's not getting any smaller.
Yeah, we add another 15, 20,000 people. We're going to need even more additional fire space.
And this is just for the buildings and the furnishings within. This is not purchasing apparatus or fire trucks. That's not. It's not the bells and whistles. There's no bells and whistles in this. This will provide the living conditions and the tools and environment for our firefighters to address our public safety.
If you can grab your headsets, we have a caller looking to reach us, and we want to mention it's 8:13 on KLIX. Debbie Dane and Leroy Harcourt joining us in studio talking about the proposed new firehouse in Twin Falls, or houses, I guess as we could best put it. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning. I think the equipment is a necessary deal, but like any piece of tool, the training is key. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know a person that has a unit or a building that needs to be destroyed, so he offered it to the fire department to practice and set ablaze and everything else. And the fire chief told him, I would love to do that, but the red tape is so long, it's not worth it.
And that's probably, there are some requirements and red tape that goes with it. For example, if a home were to be offered up to the fire department and if there were holes in the drywall, literally you would have to go in, we were told, and patch that drywall before they could burn it down. And so if we have a training facility, and this gentleman is absolutely correct, the training is necessary. So right now, if we have 5 new firefighters, if they have a training need to meet a certification or something like that, it has to be simulated versus being able to go into a building, haul those hoses, have smoke, have the different factors that affect daily when they do their job. So this is why we felt very strongly about putting money in the bond to start, and it is just a start, this training facility for firefighters, and we believe that it could be utilized throughout the valley.
Caller, anything else? Nope, I think we lost the caller already. He probably answered his question right away. When we talk about training facility, though, it's more than just practicing a burn. There's a lot. When I was a boy and we had a small town, we had a volunteer company, and they had an old building. I think they built this on their own. It was some cinder blocks with some windows, and it was for practice. And there was a small area that the fire department that they had on the edge of town where they would go, and guys who were training would go down there, and that's what they would do. But there was a lot of, even then, I mean, I'm talking 40, 45 years ago, there was a lot of training going on, classroom style training and other things that you're going
Yep.
through with all of this.
Yep.
That's what you need room for too.
So
Exactly.
that's what the first initial, the $1 million for that training facility is actually just for a building. So it'll sit at Fire Station 2 right next door to it at that Washington and Cheney
Right.
location. The other facility is, I don't know if we're it'll be
Well, there are two sites. It could be at Station 2, the new Station 2, or if the city does own some property out near the animal shelter.
yeah, and it'll have to. So right now, currently, if they need on-site training, they have to go to Meridian, Idaho, where there's a 6-story concrete building, and they can set up any scenario, any situation, kitchen fires, apartment fires, hotel fires, but they have to go that way just to get their training.
Yes.
I was going to say, well, we'll take another caller. I want to get as many callers on the air as I can before I go off into my own personal questions. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX at 816.
Good morning. Just wondering if this $35 million proposal is going to add any additional fire stations. You guys are just talking about Station 1, 2, and 3, but with the city growing like it is in every direction and the response times that they typically like to keep, is there any additional fire stations in the plans for this to be built? And also on this training facility, is it something that's been looked at to maybe join together with Rock Creek Fire and Filer City and Rural Fire to combine, have one general training facility since everybody kind of helps each other out on these big fires anyway?
I think this gentleman sat in on our deliberations.
A lot of them.
Station 1, 2, and 3, to rebuild those are in the bond. And there was a Station 5, which was in there. However, we felt, and the city folks really helped us understand that the need for another fire station was probably minimum 5 years, probably 8 years down the line, and probably future we'll have a 5, we'll have a 6 to handle the growth. With the training facility, this gentleman's exactly right. We have mutual aid agreements with these outlying fire departments, and we feel like there is a benefit and that they could help train, they could utilize this to help train their firefighters, so everyone's public safety is at a level that is really
There'd be a contribution then from some of the neighboring
So
communities.
they would all help fund said
Yeah.
facility.
And those are future conversations and probably future citizen committees.
Yeah.
Not this one.
Not this
Yeah.
one.
I was going to say, probably after all the time you put in, you want to take a slight break when all this is done.
May 22nd.
We wanted to point out, we'll take a short break. We've only got less than a minute before the first break of the hour, and it wouldn't be fair to grab another caller now. You might not get in everything you wanted to talk about. Be patient, though. A break coming up. It'll be just a couple of minutes, and we'll be able to take more of your questions and comments at that point. I do want to mention, joining us in studio this morning, Leroy Harcourt and Debbie Dane, and they were on the Citizens Commission that looked into this proposal, and of course a big vote coming up, and just an early voting going on now, as we pointed out too, taking place over at County West on this issue. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 47, likely on our way to 65 today. Could be the coolest day of our week, and then by early next week, talk about feeling like you're in a fire by Monday. It looks like we're going to finally be there. It's been a long, long wait for most of us. We're talking about proposed firehouses in Twin Falls this morning, and of course, if you've got a comment or question, we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. We're at 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. It's 44 on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And joining us in studio, Leroy Harcourt and Debbie Dane, and they were part of the Citizens Commission or committee that looked into all of this and did the reviews. And of course, a vote coming up, very big vote on this. Early voting has started, but we're likely still going to see most people come out on one particular day. Well, I'm making a bold prediction there, maybe not. But Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. on Magic Valley this morning. Leroy was mentioning during the break that one area that we need to consider that the public should know is that there is a cost savings for people once we actually go ahead with the project.
Correct. Yeah, so where that cost savings is in our fire insurance. Right now we're at I don't know how many stages there are, but we're at a zone 3 for fire insurance. So with these new buildings and capacity and bringing on more firemen in the future, it'll actually allow us to lower from 3 to 2, which in anticipation should offset the cost of the increase in taxes.
And I think the other thing too, and you address this, is the growth continues.
Right.
So whatever the taxpayer calculates as his or her contribution or investment in this will likely go down because there are new folks coming onto the tax rolls. So
We see. I was mentioning during the break, driving home yesterday, literally seeing earth movers preparing some new developments in the city of Twin Falls. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX at 825. Go ahead.
Hi, Bill, and everyone else. Retired fireman. As far as the training goes, there's a lot of facilities throughout the country that are trained firemen. I mean, the in-house is great, but when you look at the cost of maintaining the buildings and the cost of the instructors and whatnot, it gets to be quite a bit of money. And then also mega stations compared to the smaller stations spread out throughout the town, they show that the smaller stations throughout the neighborhoods actually has a faster response time, initial response time, for most incidents. And I'd just like the voters to take a look at that, and also outsourcing the training, where there's plenty of facilities throughout the country that offer some amazing deals to have the firemen come there. And with that, I'll hang up, and thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you. Your response?
okay, and and I'm not sure, we didn't talk about mega stations, but these are Station 1, Station 2, Station 3 are neighborhood stations. Currently, Station 2 is on Falls Avenue. It will move out into the neighborhood where we have a lot of housing and also a lot of commercial going out there along Cheney. Station 3 here on Orchard and Washington is a growing neighborhood. I mean, this station is just down the street from an elementary school. Station 2 is in the downtown neighborhood and will address, that downtown and then moving east. So we're not looking at building mega stations. What we're looking at is the neighborhood stations with that can address, and this gentleman, as a retired firefighter, knows that response time is key. Loss of, being slow going to a call could mean someone's life. So, and this is what those stations will address. As far as the training, we have a limited firefighting force. We have 46 people, including all of the we have one admin, we have one chief, we have 3 battalion chiefs, and we have a fire marshal and a part-time fire marshal. Everyone else is on the line. They're dual trained as EMTs. And for those folks to travel outside of the area, when we could have in-house training, say with a battalion chief taking care of his firefighters, would be probably more cost-effective or as cost-effective as sending them to outside, because then you would incur travel costs and things like that. So
I worked in a city many, many years ago where it was the city, I believe, in the country where what they call the mini maxi concept was founded, where you might have, in the old days, a couple of big firehouses, and they literally had spread small firehouses throughout. And if they needed, mutual aid even in the city, somebody from a few blocks away could join the other firefighters. The first firefighters who would roll up would make that call, because often you can roll up and pretty much get an idea of what you're going to need when it comes to the hardware you have to bring out. And I suspect that in Twin Falls it works on a very similar proposition.
it does. The reason why firehouses are kind of scattered through the city is to have that response time to both medical and fire calls. And I was asked, why do firefighters go out on medical calls? Well, they're trained as EMTs. They're trained to do basic life support. And a lot of times they can get there faster than, say, the ambulance service or something like that.
I remember a day I was driving down Fillmore Street and I was headed toward Pole Line Road, and right by Oasis, I saw a fire engine because there'd been a fender bender. And of course, I cautiously got around that, made my left turn onto Pole Line Road, and right down by Dutch Brothers, there was another fire engine and another fender bender. So it shows you that there is that need. And a police officer told me one day that we have if you count just the fender benders, we have a couple of thousand accidents in Twin Falls every year.
I think the statistics that we were given was the fire department addresses over 5,400 calls per year, and that's only going to increase as our population increases. Um, People come into our city to go to the doctor. It's a commercial center, so this is a much needed thing. And one of the things, people can go to the city's website, which is tfid.org, and they can literally take the virtual tours of Station 2 and 3.
We'll take a short break. We've got more coming up. Our guest will stick around if you've got more telephone calls. We've got a break, though, at 8:30. Caller, hold the line and be patient. We'll get back to you. It's 44 at 8:30, and Leroy Harcourt and Debbie Dane joining us this morning from the Citizens Committee that has examined the proposal for a new fire stations in the city and a training center, too. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We have some guests joining us in studio, and they're talking about the proposed new firehouses in Twin Falls and a training center as well, coming up on 8:34, and we're at 44. Joining us in the studio, Debbie Dane and Leroy Harcourt. They're part of the what I'd call the Citizen Committee. I think that's correct, right?
Yes.
Close enough.
And they were involved in doing all the research on this proposal. We have a caller looking to join us with Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on KLIX. Caller, go ahead. Caller, oh, I know what I did. I didn't punch the button hard enough. I had the caller on hold, and I apologize, caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Well, a couple of things and stuff that they need research on and stuff. They're like on the training center. Drum has a small training center already over there that does the basic training and that over there for training. And if they're going to move the fire department thing on the 2nd Street and that out there, and that building is structure for that fire department there, and it's going to be probably torn down or something like that there, and all the growth that's coming in, they need to put like a fee on all these new houses, a one-time like $1,000 fee for all these structures on wastewater in the schools and fire departments and stuff. And one that's always misleading all the time, but she just spoke about, that the property tax may be going down and out there. Once it's down, well, once they've always said that, you never see a decrease on anything. There's always an increase on everything, and it never goes down. And that's always one thing, that they might be going down and stuff. Well, that never happens. It's always going up.
Well, I thank you for the call. Sometimes it goes up, too, because salaries for people who city employees go up, I mean, periodically, too. So there are reasons for that, even though you might have a bigger tax base. Your response to all of this?
Well, I think we go back to the findings of the committee. We were charged with finding the best way to assure the public safety of the citizens of Twin Falls. And so we did, and when we looked at it, and people can look at the same research that we looked at, it would cost more to refurbish these stations. And as was pointed out by a former police chief, the best time to build is now because of the escalating costs. And one of the things with the training, even with a small training...
He wouldn't have like a French-sounding last name, would he?
I don't know.
No comment.
He's highly respected. With the training center, it's like we were talking. If you go off-site for training, if you take 5 firefighters, and even if they're in Jerome, what if they have a call? I mean, we were talking when we were off air about the Guppies fire. We called in everybody. We called in those Byler, Rock Creek, who we have mutual aid agreements with, to assist. So if you have firefighters off site for training, then that's the less firefighters we have on to address the needs of the public here.
And the comment he made about assessing new home building a fee, Leroy, you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, so I am a general contractor, and our permits did just go up. I believe it was last year. So that fee is already assessed, and I pay that for every house that I build.
And in fact, I talked to a builder at the home show at the college a couple of months ago who was saying that the difference between building a house in Filer versus building a house in a development here is $7,000 to $10,000, and a lot of those are those fees that are being assessed.
Correct.
Yeah.
We should point that out. We talked. We'll wrap this up in a couple of minutes. But again, you mentioned the website is city website is a good resource for this.
Yes, it's tfid.org. Click on the fire department, and you can see the virtual tours of stations 2 and 3. And you can also look at, it's a study by Pivot North. This was the basis. This is the information that was compiled from the program committee, which was prior to us, who did a lot of the research on what was needed. And then people can take a look at all of the costs, the proposed layouts, this type of thing. And I would encourage people, one of the primary reasons that we are here today and we've done civic presentations and we're walking our neighborhoods is to educate voters. We understand that this is an investment on their part and they need to understand when they vote yes, that where their investment is going.
We quickly again, what day is the actual vote?
The actual vote is May 21st.
Right, and again, we have early voting going on, but May 21st is pretty much decision
Is
day.
election day. Early voting started Monday, and if folks choose to vote absentee, they have an absentee ballot application which has to be mailed to the county by Friday.
So that gives people some parameters on all of this.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you for all the work you've both done.
Thank you.
I don't know that
Thank
you'll
you.
get a lot of that probably from various members of the community. I don't think they understood just how much effort went into all of this. And as you say, going out of town to tour what other people are doing is that's when you consider that round trip, then you get there and 4 hours of it is driving, and then throw in it's a full day that you
Exactly.
put into that. We have to take a short break. We want to thank both Leroy Harcourt and Debbie Dane for joining us this morning. It's 8:40 and we're at 46 on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m.